there's so much going on in the world. As I sit here, I know that I'm feeling a great deal of anger and sorrow as Walter Wallace's family is forced to mourn his death after he was killed by police in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm sitting here worried for our colleagues in New Orleans, Louisiana, and all along the Gulf, as another hurricane is about to touch down there. And I can't help but feeling the looming anxiety of next Tuesday. That context, police violence against Black folks, the climate crisis, the state of the democracy, has been our context for far too long. And it is the reason that today's conversation is so urgent. We need to understand how folks are using culturally rooted practices to move us toward post-colonial economies, and we need to multiply those efforts. As we enter that conversation, I would ask that we take a moment to remember the sustainable ways of living that existed all over North America long before the first colonial contact. I invite you to visit native-land.ca, native-land.ca, to remember what the map used to be and what might again be. And I invite you to think about the traditional stewards of our land, the ancestors, the elders, and our emerging leaders, and join me in honoring and thanking them. As we enter into conversation today, I invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat box. You might want to introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, and the true name of the land on which you sit. And as a way into our conversation, I also invite you to think about the word wealth, and maybe think and share a kind of wealth that is important to you. Today's conversation was originally started by our colleague, Danya Sherman. Danya's first work with ArtPlace was centered around arts, culture, and affordable housing. And since then, she's been invaluable to all of our research strategies. As you might know, she and our colleague, Jamie Hand, have been exploring and framing the ways that artists act as allies in 10 specific systems of community development. And at the moment, Danya is about to complete the work she's been doing around workforce development and around community wealth building. You'll see the outcomes of that work shortly. But first, Danya has invited an amazing set of colleagues to join her. So please join me in making all of them feel welcome. Danya, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And I also want to welcome Cierra Peters, our co-moderator. As Jamie mentioned, I'm Danya Sherman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm zooming in from the unceded land of the Wampanoag and Massachusetts people, now known as Somerville, near Boston. I'm so happy to be here today. Thanks all for joining us. Most of us are told that the economy is a thing outside of our control, with its own momentum that we are to passively engage with. But deep down, we know that the economy is and continues to be created by people. It's one part of our larger cultural and political ecosystem, which in America and many other countries is to say that it was built by colonialism. It was built by the dispossession of land and life from tribal nations who've been stewarding this land for millennia. It was built by the enslavement, segregation, and oppression of Africans and African Americans. And it was and continues to be built by all those who work and have worked for wages while investors and executives multiply their wealth. These oppressive dynamics are not just economic, they're cultural. And I personally come to this conversation as a white woman, a person of assimilated Eastern European Jewish ancestry, and know that myself, my parents, my grandparents were only able to benefit from these economic structures and receive loans, buy a home, etc., once we were accepted as white. So yes, we both benefit from and are complicit with this white supremacist economy. And in order to receive these benefits and escape from our own oppression, we had to trade many aspects of our culture, our Yiddish language, so much inherited wisdom that I never received, song and dance, though I feel lucky that we did not forget our love of food and how to make delicious bagels, etc. Cierra, you and Ujima, along with Tatewin, Rahwa, Mike, who will join us shortly, and so many others are part of communities not only resisting these dominant forces, but you're building alternatives that are so powerful because they engage not only the financial changes necessary, but on that deeper level, the way we relate to each other, our natural worlds, and our beliefs and emotions. You're asserting cultures that have been oppressed to create that racialized capitalism. This depth and momentum has created momentum and magnetism in your work. And because of the strength of what you and your communities are building locally, you've also seeded and are in coalition with many regional, national, even international movements. Because as Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson reminded us yesterday, these are systemic dynamics and require systems changes to fix. So I'm so honored to be co-moderating with you, Cierra, so we can keep building this work.
Thank you, Danya, for your beautiful words and your introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Cierra Peters. I use she, they pronouns. I guess I'm seated and rooted in Massachusetts. I grew up there, but I currently find myself in the People's Republic of Brooklyn, as Spike Lee would say. It has gone by many other names, but it was originally and continues to be the land of the Lenape. Currently, as Danya mentioned, I work at the Boston Ujima Project, which is an organization dedicated to the holistic liberation of Black and POC communities. The Boston Ujima Project is a democratic member-run organization building cooperative economic infrastructure in Boston with a mission to return wealth to working class communities of color. Ujima believes that to face the systemic challenges of inequity and poverty, we need to build creative interlocking systems of tools and strategies, right? We need to transform the ways that we live, that we work, that we shop, that we invest, the ways that we come together as community, our socialities and our ways of being, right? We need to think of these pieces, or each of these pieces contribute to an Ujima ecosystem that will empower working class communities to lead the creation of a more just and sustainable local economy. So I come to this conversation, as Generation 1.5. My family is from both the Caribbean and America, American slave, generations. And I guess I just come to this conversation with like liberation, futurity, and collectivity on the mind. At Ujima, we like to think about cultural spaces as a way to imagine and practice more liberatory future for our peoples. And in that way, I think that I mean to say that culture is a tool that we have to perform the new world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cierra. So now we want to invite in Rahwa Ghirmatzion from Push Buffalo, Tatewin Means from Thunder Valley CDC, and Mike Leyba from City Life Vida Urbana.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome. Please introduce yourselves, the roles you play, your organizations, the land you're on, and then we'll get into talking more about our work. Rahwa, would you like to start?
Sure. Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to be here at the ArtPlace Summit. You guys have been huge supporters for years of Push Buffalo, and Danya and Cierra, thank you so much for being our hosts. So I'm coming to you from Buffalo, New York, and those of us living and working in Buffalo and Western New York occupy land stolen from indigenous people who lived in this region since the last glaciation. We acknowledge that the Seneca Nation of the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy lived in this region during European colonization. They were dispossessed of their land promised in the 1794 Treaty of Canandaigua, violating the agreement that affirmed their land rights and sovereignty in the state of Western New York. As newcomers to the Great Lakes region, we have broken treaties and destroyed lands and forests, polluted the waters, we've taken their children, and refused to peaceably share and care for the resources as agreed. This region is still home to the Seneca people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and share this region as allies of our Native brothers and sisters. I also want to acknowledge that this country's economy was built by free labor stolen from Africa, by stolen people from Africa. And we at Push Buffalo are committed to Black liberation and Indigenous sovereignty. We will work in solidarity to restore right relations with the Seneca and Haudenosaunee people and with the land. Push Buffalo is a member-led, member-driven organization. And while our work is both local, hyper-local, It's statewide and it's national. Really, our place of practice for a just transition and being in right relationship can be witnessed in the Green Development Zone, which was founded in 2008. And it combines green affordable housing construction, community-based renewable energy projects, housing weatherization, green jobs training, green infrastructure and vacant land restoration, arts integration, as well as new economy strategies, all towards the goal of creating pathways to employment for neighborhood residents, while we also care for Mother Earth and the natural systems around us. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Rahwa. Tatewin, welcome you to the stage.
Hamidakiapi iu ha chante washte anapetuzapied Tatewin means amachiapie sisitoan Dakota na ogal Lakota wia himacha chesapa himataha. Greetings, relatives. My name is Tatewin means. My full name is actually Tatui Dopa Najiwi, which means the woman that stands with the four directions. And I was named after my paternal grandmother. I am Sisitin Wapitin Dakota and Oglala Lakota from Ocheti Shakoi, Great Sioux Nation, here in what is now called South Dakota. I'm the executive director of Thunder Valley Community Development Corporation, which is a grassroots nonprofit organization in the heart of what is the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. There are 9 tribal nations here in South Dakota, and a lot of our work is rooted in our lifeways, our language, our spirituality. Our vision is liberation for our people, and that is very much tied to our freedom and our sovereignty. And you know what the work that we're doing here at Thunder Valley CDC is very much writing our community's healing story, creating a movement across our communities, across our nation, for healing and wellness and liberation, and really trying to define what that means in today's time while still deeply rooted and connected to our identity as Lakota and Dakota people. And so it is an honor to be here today with all of you as attendees and with the panelists. It's so important to have Indigenous voices in these conversations. And I must say, seeing all of the people checking in and introducing yourselves and recognizing the land in which you occupy really fills my heart with good feelings. It just feels as though our ancestors are recognized, and in doing so, brings them here with us to be a part of this conversation. And so I really appreciate all of you taking the time to introduce yourself and acknowledge the land you're on in that way. Pilamaya.
Thank you so much. Mike, please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Mike Leyba. I'm Chicane, born in Tongva land, currently living in Boston, Massachusetts, home of the Massachusetts people and the people of First Light, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, who have lived on this land for more than 12,000 years. My organization is City Life Vida Urbana, and we help people stay in their homes and rooted in their communities. We're a 45-year-old organization. We do community organizing work, primarily with our region's Black and Brown working class people. In Boston, we have a bit of an eviction machine problem. This machine that we have in Boston is facilitating the systematized uprooting of entire Black and Brown neighborhoods due to speculation, market forces, gentrification, and the commodification of land and community. Housing displacement is a constant, ongoing crisis in Boston, and City Life is on the front lines fighting back. So I'm really honored to be along with such amazing voices, and an honor to be part of this summit.
Thank you, Mike. all of your introductions were, just so beautiful. And thank you, Tatewin, for graciously, acknowledging and inviting us into, what it means to be in right relationship with Indigenous peoples, or the first step of that. So I guess my first question is, what are you and your community building at this intersection, the intersection of housing, culture, and economics more generally? And how has that changed more recently during the pandemic?
So at Thunder Valley CDC, when I think of, when I was thinking about this question of what are we building, first and foremost, we're building a movement, and many movements, right, within this overarching umbrella of liberation. We have equity movements that we are building across our communities, women's equity, where we're really taking aim at the effects of colonization as it manifests in lateral oppression amongst our people, building equity across, community wealth, redefining what community wealth means to us as Lakota people, and really reprogramming and shifting our mindsets to think and act once again as Lakota people. And so, the overarching movement that we have is really a healing movement. And, the first step of liberation, the first step of sovereignty, sovereignty does not lie within an institution or within a government. That's a component of it, absolutely. But when people often think about sovereignty in Indian country, they think about tribal governments. Tribal governments asserting sovereignty, protecting sovereignty, putting things in place to, enhance sovereignty, all those things. And I think that's the first misstep of many people, is to automatically associate sovereignty and liberation and self-determination with institutions. Because what we've come to know is that the first step of any movement starts with self. So self-sovereignty and self-liberation are absolutely essential in building a broader collective liberation movement. And the work that we're doing at Thunder Valley is specific to our community, to our nation, to our people, and in the hopes of inviting the other nations of the Oceti to be a part of that movement, because collectively, the 7 bands that are a part of Oceti together would be a tremendous movement towards righting the wrongs of colonization and the impacts of white supremacist systems. But this process also brings in the decolonization and the healing of this entire nation of what is now the United States. Where we are is, we often refer to it as Turtle Island, right? And so, the hopes is that in having this movement build locally and having and sharing spaces such as this to talk about these things, a collective movement will build around, a massive decolonization and healing process for this country, so that we can take aim at the common enemy of colonization and white supremacist systems. And so overall, that's what we're building. More pragmatically, I guess, we're actually constructing and building a 30 or 4 acre regenerative community on land within the reservation. The first steps of that, I came on board in 2018, but as an organization, we've been in existence for 13 years. But even beyond that, the roots of our organization are in our spirituality. The idea of this grassroots work came from ceremony. And that is something that has remained constant in our work throughout. I think it's something that distinguishes us from many organizations, especially that try to work with Indigenous communities, is that first and foremost, we're Lakota, and we live every day our life ways, the teachings, and our spirituality. And that is the ultimate compass for the work that we do. And so in building this regenerative community, there are many lessons we learn, because as a nonprofit, that doesn't always mean you're a community developer, right? And so working in an Indigenous community in a rural setting, there are so many things and resources and support and allyship that we need to truly understand what it means to be a community developer in these spaces. And so one of the most important lessons, that we always carry with us is being a good relative as Lakota people. That's a value. is how are you a good relative? How do you show your relatives your generosity? I saw people talking about the wealth of generosity, and I couldn't agree with that more. So we're really conscious and cognizant at Thunder Valley about how are we being a better relative to our community members. And much of that is meeting our community where they're at. Not forcing outside systems and expectations upon them, as have been done with Indigenous communities since the point of colonization, but really meeting our community where they're at in their own healing journey, in their own liberation journey, and providing those opportunities and pathways for them to find that and to define that for themselves. And so, our community is truly innovative, especially, in the area that we're in. Because of this whole community approach that we take through 8 different initiatives that really take aim at the social determinants of health in our community. But the ultimate goal of really shifting mindsets, right? You can build the most beautiful buildings, you can have the most thoughtful programs, but if you don't get at the heart of what makes people tick, if you don't get at the heart of their mindset and shift it from a culture of survival, a culture of poverty, it will be for nothing, because you'll continue to perpetuate those harmful cycles that we see in our communities as a result of colonization. And so, that's the work that we are focused on, that we are excited and thankful that we're able to do every day. So I'm happy to share with all of you where we're at.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I really appreciate what you said about getting at the hearts and minds of people in order to change our ways of being. Mike, Rahwa, would you like to?
Sure. I mean, I think that when you do place-based work and when you understand your community and you're doing, a human-centered sort of work, and getting at the heart of everything, the frameworks are all the same, right? And as Tatewin reminds us all, that we are all relatives, right? And so I see that as see no stranger. You're just a part of me that I yet do not know. And so as we think that way and shift in our mindsets, the work that we do at the local level for us is always, we're 15 years old this year, hard to believe, we're a bratty teenager. But our place-based initiative really was just about talking to people. We brought together 400 residents that put down beliefs of, we know what we want where we live, that real people have real power. While we are a frontline, under-resourced and underestimated community, there's so much local knowledge, so much expertise, and so much determination. And so that's what we were able to capture. We created our beliefs. What are our values? What do we actually want to commit to? Again, this idea of we're all relatives. What are the actual strategies, winnable strategies, right? And how do we implement these things? And so if you visit our website, www.pushbuffalo.org, you can see where 15 years ago, 400 people, everyday residents came together and literally created the plan for us. That was our framework that we have continued to iterate and evolve over the last 15 years. And so we currently have a 30 block square area where we build affordable housing, where we build renewable energy projects, where we do, internal, external, new economy strategies. We're starting social enterprises. We're starting cooperative businesses. But the idea is that we are also co-designing and we are being led by what the community wants every step of the way. We are winning, big old policies across the state, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which is the most advanced and equitable climate legislation in the country, actually has 40% set aside that will be going to communities just like ours so that they can have the resources they need so that we don't have to do one project at a time. But I think the other really beautiful thing about that is, we learned from winning policies previously that if you do not have an implementation strategy from the start, then you will pass the bill and they're just still going to do whatever they want to do. So the beautiful thing is we went from an organizing to pass a legislation to now we're organizing on the implementation. And the New York Renews Coalition has been able to have representation on every single working group, the Climate Action Council and panel advisories. And so I think that's the kind of mindset for really long-term changes to build a powerful and resilient community.
I have such a movement crush on both Push Buffalo and Thunder Valley CDC. Y'all, your work is really incredible. And I know at City Life, you know, our culture has kind of always played an important part of our organizing work. You know, we hold kind of one of the cornerstones of our work is holding weekly meetings in English and Spanish for people who are facing displacement. We typically have between 90 and 120 people come weekly to these meetings. And one of the first things they're asked to do when they're in this space is to tell their story. They soon discover they're in a room full of people who have either been there or committed to supporting them. Dominant culture is telling them to blame themselves and to be ashamed and to be alone. And one of the first things that we try to intervene on is breaking through this dominant culture that is instilled in them and creating a culture of speaking their truth, of finding solidarity among each other and advocating for systemic solutions that resolve their case, yes, and also impact the community at large. This kind of initial shift in narrative has really profound implications on people's sense of agency and on their ability to resist for the sake of a just transition, both for communities and for the planet. During COVID-19, we've seen kind of dominant cultural narratives of scarcity, blame, rugged individualism, and infallibility of the economic system really set the terms of the debate that we're currently having, which on a fundamental level is whether we deserve to survive or thrive or not. And, you know, for me, it became really clear to myself that countering this harmful culture and these harmful narratives, both are important to do for our well-being and our healing and the way we see ourselves as protagonists in the story, but also have material impacts on the terrain on which we're organizing. So for the last 2 years, I've been working on a set of creative projects with a group of other housing justice advocates and professional storytellers focused on upending these dominant cultural narratives. One that I'm really, really proud of working on is a story called Mine, a story of Blaze, an intrepid Black non-binary teen and their sister Mia, who live in a utopian community that is turned upside down when ideas of scarcity and individualism are introduced. The story is currently, you know, in production, and it's like this whole thing. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a 5-episode animated season, and we're producing the pilot episode right now. But really, there are material impacts on the culture that's around us and the messages we're being told. And in a moment of crisis like COVID, we default to these narratives. And so really pushing them and expanding beyond them is the work. It's not, you know, it's not all of the work, but it's a really important part of the work. So.
Thank you all. Mike, I'm so excited for your show. Tatewin, you've spoken about, or you talked about living culture and troubling the idea of culture as separate from our daily lives. Mike, you also just mentioned that. In dominant culture, we see the definition of culture being is, you know, the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. How do you define or understand culture?
As Lakota people, we don't have a word for culture. In our language, it's Lakol Wichocha, which is a way of life. It's something, you know, lifeways are way of life. And we did get a teaching from an elder in a presentation we did in the community at one point to, you know, to remind us of our language and those teachings that are inherent even in the language and the songs that we have. And not to always default to the colonizers' language and words, and really focusing on changing that narrative and returning to who we are as Lakota people. And so when you think about it in that way, you know, we really strive to embed our lifeways and our teachings and our spirituality, as I mentioned in my intro, into every aspect of our work and who we are. So, you know, in our organization, we begin and end each day together as a staff with prayer, Wochekie, so that we are always reminded of things to be thankful for. Even in the hardest of times, there are always things to be thankful for and to gravitate to. And so, you know, we have those set up. When we were able to be together as a staff, we would have, you know, monthly ceremony that we would get together and practice our traditional ceremonies together as a staff. So when you have one heart and one mind, that's a part of that movement, right? That's a part of making that change and difference that we need in the community. And so it's for me personally, like from a Lakota perspective, it's problematic when you hear culture as an add-on or something that you check off a list that, okay, are we considering culture? Where's the culture? How can we do, you know, creative placemaking? It's always about us as the controllers of a place or a space, rather than trying to find the balance of how we occupy those spaces and live in harmony with it, right? And so we talked a lot earlier about, you know, the right relationship. A part of that is healing not only yourselves, but healing your relationship with the earth, with Mother Earth. You know, Ujima is the R word for that, and that's a grandmother, right? So when you think of the earth as a grandmother, as a relative, when you think of all living beings as a relative, it's harder to destroy her, right? Is that how you would treat your grandmother, the way that we collectively are treating the earth now? And so I think it's so important to be aware of the narrative, the language that we use when we speak of these things. And for Indigenous people, for Lakota people especially, you know, I can't speak for other nations, but it's not something that can be an afterthought. Our liberation, our survival, our very lives depend on rooting ourselves and centering our lifeways and teachings so that we can continue to survive and exist and thrive for generations to come. You know, as a practice for us has always been planning for 7 generations ahead. Okay, so thinking about what are the legacies we want to leave for 7 generations, right? So we are being good ancestors today in making those plans for that many generations, not just for my lifetime, right? And when you think about it in that way, accumulating things for yourself or for your organization in the now, it becomes a distant, you know, thought. You're thinking ahead and forward about 7 generations down the road. It really changes your approach and your strategies. And so I would just encourage everyone to think about, you know, life ways, teachings from your families, from your nations, from your people, from your community that are important to carry on and center in every day of your life, right? And challenging those narratives that the colonizer has put upon us when we talk about these things, that it is just an add-on that we can choose to include or not, but really it has to be the integral part of our existence.
Wow. You just said a word. Oh my God. Mike, Rahwa, would you like to add?
Yeah, well, I feel like I could dive, so I would swim in that comment for a while if I could. Yeah, but just to kind of say, I think, you know, for me, culture is the air we breathe. It's the water we drink. It's around us everywhere. It's in every interaction, every ad we see, and every dream for a better future. It is what gives us life in a lot of ways, or maybe the inverse. And I believe it to be inherently relational. So like, it allows us to see or to not see the links between things. Just like Tatewin was just saying, like, when you think of the earth as a grandmother or as a relative, it completely changes your relationship with it. And so culture as surfacing the ability to help us or hinder us from making sense of people's interactions in the world around us is a really important terrain to fight on. It's both a compass for kind of, culture can be a compass for the terrain that we're currently fighting on, as well as fertile ground to plant seeds of the world we want to live in. And I know that Rahwa and Push Buffalo.
Oh my God. You know what? I love these people. I mean, this is for all the viewers out there. I could listen to Tatewin go on and on forever. Yeah, so, in my previous life before I joined Push, I was actually the executive director of an organization called Ujima Theater, which means it's one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, collective work and responsibility. But as Tatewin was saying, we did theater. It was a collective that started in 1978, really as a tool or as a weapon to fight for justice, using revolutionary acts of love, but also very much rooted in owning the means of production, right, which is an anti-colonialist framework. And so, I learned when I first started working in that organization, where someone said to me that our culture, our ability to practice our creativity is our gifts to each other. Where in the world, and you can go anywhere in the world and you play drums, you can play drums with that community. You don't speak the same language, you have no idea what's going on, but you can actually have a drum session. And so if we all look the same, if we all spoke the same language, how boring would life be? I mean, look at Mother Nature, right? And all the plant species, it's the colors, it's the different textures. And so I've always seen culture and also people that are different from me as people that I can learn from, and to try to understand what their gifts are and how do we share in that interaction. And then we at Push Buffalo, from an organizing framework, really use arts and culture for a whole host of reasons. One, we have a huge immigrant refugee population. So language access is a huge barrier on the west side of Buffalo. We are building a multiracial, intergenerational movement where the greatest populations are our youth and our elders, actually, and a few of us in between. And so we use arts and culture to share stories, to share wisdom, to pass on knowledge. But also we work a lot with the youth that have, a whole lot of different flavors, whether it's hip hop, whether it's music, whether it's their dance, and so that it's about also bringing joy. And we use it in urban planning as they are co-designing to make it really accessible, engaging, and fun. And many of us are, huge fans of Octavia Butler, very much into sci-fi and Afrofuturism. So it's also about how we're imagining the future and what is the future that we want to build. So all of that is really harnessed and kind of all cooked together within the Green Development Zone and the work that we do.
Wow. Oof. So maybe we can think about, housing, relationality, culture, economy. These are all lifeways. And it sounds like from what y'all are saying that it's a desire for communal wholeness through past or purposely obscured ways of being, and that y'all are using or thinking about housing justice as the vehicle through which we can kind of think about these things.
Yeah, and I just so appreciate the point, Tatewin and Rahwa and Mike, that you cannot separate culture from this work, right? That even the idea that we could separate our creative power from anything else, I agree. It's kind of this Western European Enlightenment idea, and it serves to obscure the culture that we're always practicing, whether it's the kind of culture that we want to keep building or not. So to bring that intentionality around our lifeways, around our creative power, around our culture feels really important. Also just reminded of the deep connection that solidarity economies have always played in this work of interrupting culture and building new. So I'm wondering if you could each share a little bit more in detail about some of those economic housing strategies that you're building and how Lifeways Culture Arts are moving through that work.
Sure. I'll talk a little, we have so much going on, but I will talk about our next housing project, which we're really excited about because it's 49 units of affordable and supportive housing for our, community members that are dealing with mental health and addiction issues, but also facing homelessness. But they will be integrated into our community, so they're not like separated out, so that we're building in enough supports for them. We have been focus grouping the units with them, so they got to design the actual units that they'll be in and told us where they would like things to be situated. And we're partnering with 2 organizations Buffalo Art Studio and Ujima Theater, and utilizing some local artists to figure out what is some kind of art project is going to happen, but we don't know what that is yet, because the folks that are going to be, you know, the end users or the stakeholders, the folks living there, get to design something that is really meaningful to them so that they can really cement themselves into the community and not feel like outsiders in any way. And of course, the other really exciting thing about that project is that they will be built to net zero and passive house standards, where in Buffalo, New York, we're not building any gas lines. Is really, really exciting. So as we think about even, you know, creating housing that is using the best source materials that are going to be regenerative, not just of the people, and create safety and security and stability, but also that Mother Earth is being thought of, and we're moving away from this extractive economy in a very holistic way.
Mike, Tatewin, would y'all like to jump in?
Sure. It makes me really excited to hear, Rahwa, that the work around like permanent supportive housing for those that are, you know, fighting and facing their substance abuse and mental health issues. I think that's so important. In my former life, before nonprofit work, I was the Attorney General for the Oglala Sioux tribe. So it definitely, I feel that the need for that, and especially in our communities. And an opportunity actually came available to us to partner with a Nebraska nonprofit in creating some transition and permanent supportive housing for our relatives that are, you know, constantly recidivizing in the criminal justice system, in large part because of substance abuse or mental health issues. And so, you know, one strategy in this effort, and kind of what I spoke to earlier about meeting our community where they're at, is how do we reach those on the periphery of our communities, the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. And a lot of times it's, you know, for us, it's our young people, 18 to 26-year-olds, that really lack the resources and opportunities to make a change, make a permanent change in their life and their life's trajectory. And so it's exciting to hear when others are working in that area. It just gives me a lot of hope for our young people that they'll find hope in their life. But currently, you know, we do have single family homes on our 34 acres in the reservation. We have a 12-unit apartment building and a community center and bunkhouse. Future development will depend in large part on community engagement and the feedback from the community on the needs. You know, we received a lot of feedback for the need for veteran-specific homes, elder spaces that are safe and accessible, and designated spaces for our youth. And so those are all in the consideration. And again, just one of the values that we hold as an organization is meaningful community engagement. So creating opportunities for the broader community to really guide the direction that we go in future development. We really try to, and have done so, I think pretty effectively, root a lot of the design and planning in our lifeways and teachings. And so, you know, we've passed comprehensive design guidelines for the Oglala Sioux tribe. There are no like building codes, established building codes. So this was our attempt to put something in place so that when we're working with contractors and outside architects and designers, there's a set of standards that are rooted in our identity as local people that they will adhere to. So we can ensure we get the best product, but that also reflects who we are as Lakota people. You know, so even the image that was up earlier with the aerial view of our current development as it is, the 21 single family homes are set up in 3 different circles, seven houses in each circle. And that is how our Oceti encampments originally set themselves up. You know, the 7 different nations within the Oceti all had designated places in the camp circle, and that the opening always faced to the east. And so having the actual physical layout of our community reflect who we are is so important. Taking elements of our traditional living structures, the teepee, you know, always rooted with rocks and stone for that connection to the earth and the wood. So you'll see that those design concepts throughout all of our buildings, and particularly our community center. And I'm excited that our most recent construction project is the building of our our green spine spaces. We're starting to build out our green spine and park spaces of the community and our playground. And it was an interesting process. This is a part of changing that narrative. When we had an engineering company do the initial drawings and renderings, we asked them to make sure our lifeways were at the center of the design. And this is a company that had worked in Indian country for decades, right? They do a lot of projects in Indian country, and they're a non-Indigenous firm, you know, from a local town. And the cultural pieces they added were a star quilt design and a medicine wheel. Very stereotypical Indigenous or Lakota considerations. And so we said, you have to do better. Here are some books, here are some teachings. These are the things that are important to us and that we want our children to learn and experience when they're on this playground. And so it was several iterations of that, many long conversations around really raising their cultural IQ around what it means to work in a culturally competent way in Indigenous communities. And we finally centered on, you know, one of our greatest teachings is the Great Race around the sacred Black Hills. And we have 7 sacred sites in the Black Hills as Lakota people. And every playground structure within our playground represents one of those sacred sites, you know, even the physical layout. So as children are there, as families are there, they're gaining that knowledge that they may not have otherwise. And so it's those types of things that I think as organizations, as marginalized communities, as Indigenous communities, we really have to hold tight and firm to our values and push back against those that may not understand it, that may not have the education. And it takes a lot of patience. It can be exhausting to continually have those conversations, but in the end, it's worth it.
I think for our work, you know, in Boston, in a very urban area, part of the challenge is actually shifting people's orientation to land generally. So, you know, to the point of thinking 7 generations out or multiple generations out, you know, inherent in land struggle is the fact that every decision that's made today will effectively impact the community for 100 years beyond today. You know, this is inherently multi-generational work and needs to be thought of that way. You know, I know that's already been said, but just reiterating, that's super critical. And so part of the struggle of like changing culture locally is around getting people that are within various kind of parts of this decision-making process to understand that there are actually, you know, for you, it's an externality to do X, Y, and Z. For us, there are real material consequences for that decision. And so actually, you know, surfacing the fact that there is, there are challenges to doing this. And I really appreciate, you know, the idea of supportive housing. And I mean, locally, we have a 200-unit, deeply affordable supportive housing complex that's being challenged on the merits of it doesn't have enough parking. And it's like, this is a 200, you know, this is something our community desperately needs in a place that's willing to have it. And it's, you know, it's being shot down for reasons that are kind of immaterial in the grand scheme of things. So I think that really reframing things as these are decisions that will impact us for generations, I think is really critical. And then just to also say that to not underestimate the usefulness, or not usefulness, but the importance of changing things within this generation too, of changing mindsets and changing ideas. So, you know, I kind of spoke a little bit earlier about personal transformation. You know, that's a really key part of our work. One of my favorite phrases from one of our leaders is, her name is Miss Carolyn. She's a mother and grandmother. She owns a salon, has done it for 30 years. She came into her first City Life meeting in 2010 when she was facing foreclosure. And she, in her words, she said, I walked into City Life scared and I walked out a warrior. And, you know, when that type of personal transformation happens, when we're as civilization really staring down what are our values and what are we going to do in the face of this crisis, people like Miss Carolyn actually play a really important role in how that gets resolved. Protagonists like her, like Annie and Betty, they're two grandmothers who came in when they were facing a rent hike. They've lived in this building for decades. They're continuing to build power in their community. And so like just this personal transformation element is really critical, uniting these folks together. And then in moments where our change is bound to happen, the phrase, I really love the phrase, change is inevitable, justice is not. That's exactly what we're facing right now in this COVID-19 moment. There is so much change happening on a daily basis within our communities. In Massachusetts, in the next few months, we're expecting about 130,000 renters and homeowners to face eviction or foreclosure in the next few months. Change is happening, and it is our job and our responsibility to really find points of intervention, shift the culture, shift the narratives that we're telling, and guide it towards something that is more just. We won't probably get 100% where we need to be, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. We need to try harder. We need to get better. We need to focus on it. So building this culture of resilience, of solidarity, of abundance, and liberation is really the work.
Thank you, Mike. I'm gonna jump in a little bit and talk about the Boston Ujima project. I just also want to echo everything that y'all are saying. I think that there's like this myth in capitalism that it's inherently democratic because you can vote with your dollar, right? But it's just like the 1% owns most of the money, so their vote is usually unfairly powerful in shaping our economy. A small segment of society gets to direct the flow of capital. Communities are left out with no choice, and we're kind of forced to accept the consequences. So we have at the Boston Ujima Project the Ujima Fund, as Rahwa mentioned. Ujima means collective work and responsibility. So the Ujima Fund is the first democratically governed fund. So it's co-designed, governed, and grounded in working class communities. If you're a voting member, meaning you have to live in the city of Boston, you get to vote on where the resources are invested. So if you invest $50 or $100,000, you have one vote, and you have to live in the city. So far, we've raised $3.1 million for the fund. And I just wanted to also echo what y'all were saying. I think that what I love about Ujima and like why I came to this work, why I came to this organization is that it's informing or affirming our best, most inherent, most natural ways of being, right? Like, how do you get people to see that there's another way? How do we encourage people to let go of their previous definitions and articulations of economy and governance and planning and joy and power, dominance and so on and so on? How do we understand our abundance, our own abundance, so we can relearn how we want to relate to the world where we're not engaging in extractive and dehumanizing practices? A lot of that shows up in those spaces that we co-organize. So earlier this week, I was so happy that we were joined by Dr. Carolyn Shanaz Hussein. She's a wonderful economist who spoke about the Black social economy. And it's a term that she coined to kind of describe the ways that we have always used mutual aid and created alternatives to the mainstream structures. So specifically, she was talking about banker ladies and Roscas. Rosca is like the academic term, meaning rotating savings and credit association. And if you're from an Afro-diasporic community, you probably know this as a susu. If you're from India, you probably know this as a kitty or a kit. It's just a form of banking that's practiced around the world. And it's really about giving permissions to ourselves, right? Like we can all sit around, the 5 of us, drink some tea, eat some samosas, eat some oxtail, whatever you do. And we can decide how our $100 each is going to be banked. And who gets the $500 at the end of that 5 months, right? Like, I'm sorry, at the end of each month. So it's rotating credit and savings. And it's a form of banking that's, practiced around the world. And it's really about giving permission to ourselves. Like everything that y'all saying was so important. I think that, Indigenous, Black, POC ways of being, our analysis and our strategies for surviving and thriving are technologies, and they're compulsively regarded as informal. And we have our own traditions, we have our own histories, and we have our own innovations on this work. And I think that like just returning to them is going to be the most important thing.
Wow, thank you all so much. This is amazing. And I'm just loving all the love in the chat. I'm overwhelmed. In this time of strife and heaviness, you all are providing so much light for all of our communities, guiding us, merging all the personal change we have to do, the communal work that we can do together, our legislation, political work. So thank you all so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. And I put all of the links of these organizations that Tatewin, Mike, Cierra, and Rahwa have been talking about. So please follow them, support their work. And then just really quickly before I pass it back to Jamie Bennett for some notes about the rest of the day, if you could pull up our last slide. We wanted to just remind us all that in this moment, there's still time to vote if you're able and you haven't already. We encourage you all to support the Movement for Black Lives legislative agenda, where you'll see a lot of economic and political alignment with what we've been talking about today. And we encourage you to educate yourself around what tribal lands you're occupying, which a lot of you have already, thankfully, and also to make efforts and connect with those tribal nations directly. In Massachusetts, you can support the North American Indian Center of Boston Mass Indigenous Legislative Agenda and the Black Mass Coalition. There are a lot of other things that we can do. Feel free to add more in the chat, but again, just thank you all so much for today. Thank you all for being here, attendees, and thank you ArtPlace for hosting us and all the people behind the scenes that made this possible. Thank you.
Wow, I don't know that I have much to do other than add my thanks to Danya and Cierra for dreaming up such an extraordinary conversation, and Cierra for not only having it, but also echoing it in the chat. And Mike and Rahwa and Tatewin, thank you so much for what you shared. I was thinking back, Tatewin, to a couple of years ago when getting together in person was still a thing, and we had a chance to go see a play in New York City by the playwright Larissa Fasthorse, who was recently recognized by the MacArthur Foundation as a genius, correctly so. And Larissa says that it's the job of artists to create beautiful communal spaces that are uncomfortable and entertaining. And I think the five of you created a beautiful communal space that at times was uncomfortable and at times was entertaining. So just my great thanks and the great thanks of all of us who had the privilege of listening in. Thank you.